Hello and welcome to the Tonic Weight Loss Podcast. My name is Harry Hedges, and as I always keep promising, we are here every single Friday at the moment. This is season 3, episode 5, and yeah, we're trying to get different stories from different patients. I know that's the real hook of these podcasts. I've done some by myself, and the views are always lower compared to patients. So, so the people have spoken, and I'm delivering on that front. Okay, and also what I think is really important is finding out people at different parts of the journey. And this is amplified today massively. We've got a patient who is 4 months post-procedure, and all the stories and the ups and the downs that brings. I've got Lucy Harrison today. How are we doing, Lucy? You okay?
Yeah, very good. Thank you, Harry.
Welcome. Thank you so much for taking your time to join me today and fundamentally help other people. I think when people are going through this process, you know, knowledge is power and there's different ups and downs. It seems to be an industry of comparison. So let's compare in a empowering way. And I think the best way to do that, Lucy, is just to find out your story. Please, if you don't mind taking the floor, who is Lucy Harrison? What brought you to this podcast today? And if we go back down the sort of memory lane, how was your sort of journey with nutrition, fitness, all the kind of avenues that it brings?
Sure. I was young, fit and healthy. My childhood, I was probably on the, I suppose I'd use the word sturdy.
Sturdy.
Solid. Solid but active. Didn't have any health issues connected to my weight. And that continued all through university. Then I went off into the world of work. And I think probably my weight issues and relationship with food issues, as in eating my feelings, is something I used to do a lot. Probably started when I was 30 or around 30, and I'm 52 now, so a fair while back in the past. And I think I've, through habit of getting out of the good habit of doing exercise or minimal exercise and allowing life to get in the way, and instead of when there's an issue that could be something really small, dealing with it, I would go to a packet of crisps or a bar of chocolate. I think I put on a stealth half stone every year. And then I found myself late last year. I didn't have a fall, as they say, but I jarred my knee. And I went to the doctors and had MRI scans, and it was found out I have osteoarthritis in both knees and very little cartilage between them. So it's bone on bone arthritis. So very, very painful. And by this stage, and the last time I weighed myself was earlier this year, early May, I'd reached the heady shameful heights of 26 stone. Now which is a lot. I'm 5'9" and a bit. So I'm tall and broad, but it's still a lot of weight, and it's still a good 10 stone of excess weight that I was carrying.
And I think that compounds, well, as we know, or any joint issue really, but particularly arthritis. And I think there's a few things I want to sort of touch on there, because I think there's a few interesting points. I've never heard someone say a stealth half stone per year or so. And I think that's actually a really honest assessment, because I've lost weight, I've put on weight, I've lost weight again, and it can happen without you kind of noticing. Yeah. And I think you mentioned about sort of eating with your emotions. I think a problem with eating with our emotions, and I know I do that as well. I think most people deep down can understand that.
Yeah.
But people eat when they're happy, they eat when they're sad, they eat when they're bored, they eat when they're angry. There's this concept, if we're having a social occasions with loved ones, which is a very happy environment, hopefully, it's there's food involved, isn't there? Or sometimes alcohol and what have you. Yeah. And I think maybe the quote unquote darker side might be, I've had a bad day, I'm going to go and find what we perceive as happiness, but I think it's probably pleasure in that short-term reward of food. Because pleasure is something where you can do it and actually realize it wasn't actually that fulfilling afterwards. It can be very pleasurable to get drunk. It can be very pleasurable to do very short-term reward things, but it doesn't really breed happiness, so to speak, you know. And if you're coming in from both angles there, you can see how that stealth half stone can really accumulate.
And big portions, always filling a plate. I was brought up in a household that was very much, oh, well done, you've cleared your plate, or you can't leave the table until you've cleared your plate, as I think many people did.
Yeah, yeah. I don't
and
know if it's a
possibly still do.
yeah, 100%. I don't know if
It's
it's a
what they say to
UK.
their children. Well done, you finished all of that. And it's kind of, oh, is that the right thing, right message? It certainly wasn't for me when I would pile a plate high, because I was as you say, it's pleasurable at the time and you're enjoying it.
Well, you make an interesting point there because you think I just had a daughter 9 months ago,
Mm.
and there is a thing of, I mean, we do it, it's a bit different for baby, but like as
Yeah,
children get older, we tend to say, "Well done, you ate it all," and if you think about that dynamic for a second, you've got a child who's having food prepared for them by somebody else. We don't know how hungry the child is, right? But there's no portion control there, whatever. And it tends to be if you've eaten it, you've done really well. Is that a UK thing or a Western world thing? I don't really know, but it's definitely something that
it's
potentially
definitely
could be.
UK. I assume it may be around the world. It's
Yeah, yeah, and it's a dynamic that maybe people don't recognise as being problematic when actually you can see why it might be. Particularly as food groups sometimes isn't always nutrient dense food as well, is it? It can be a combination of different things. Pizza, or well done, you've completed your plate. I'm not sure if that's a good thing sometimes.
Elbridge pizza. Well done. No.
And what was it you mentioned that sort of getting to the age of 30?
Mm.
What was there a stand? I mean, obviously full time work, and
Hmm.
was there sort of other standout features there that maybe made it problematic?
At that time of life, I was 30 when my dad passed away. So
Wow. Okay.
it
Okay.
was, yeah, it was tough.
Of course.
And
Blimey, yeah.
then I don't drink alcohol now. I haven't done for probably about 8 years, 8, 9 years.
It's a good move.
But a very good move. Best move I ever made. I'd recommend it to anybody.
So with alcohol, my side, I take moments of, at the moment I'm in the middle of a 6 month phase, for
Mm.
example. So I'll take moments per year. I'm still in that kind of, uh, this is actually very, very disempowering, but social circles, if you don't drink, you're not invited, basically. And so I navigate that around my year and I try to do 3 to 6 months per year without. And the
Yeah.
benefits, to your point a minute ago, compound to the point where I'm like, what am I even doing this for? And I think it will just naturally fade away, particularly coming to dad recently as well.
Definitely. Your lifestyle changes. I mean, for me, it was when I was living and working in London, so I was getting public transport, so I didn't need to think about driving home.
Mm,
Whereas now I live in Norfolk, and if I want to go anywhere, I have to drive.
makes it quite
So
inconvenient.
it makes so why would I plan to? Yeah,
I saw a saying the other day
it's
that
not part of my life anymore. It used to be. It used to be too much a part of my life, but it
yeah,
isn't now, and I'm really happy about that.
I can resonate with that a little bit as well. When I was younger, before I was a personal trainer and what have you, and even in the early days of being a personal trainer, again, it's
Mm.
a similar thing, right? It's a pleasure. It's a short-term reward system, isn't
Yeah,
it? And I think obviously with weight, it's a factor. You can argue sometimes people come off alcohol and then maybe channel that more through food, which can happen sometimes. But I think I saw an Instagram reel the other day, and this guy said when you become 35 and over, I'm 36. He said you have a thing called NTFF, no time for foolishness. And I was like, I might get NTFF written across a T-shirt for me because I kind of like that a little bit.
I
And
think.
it's
Yeah, I think NTFF with alcohol, but foolishness in general should never be discouraged.
oh no 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 yeah absolutely no. I think he was more referring to sort of like loud noises and traffic and things
Oh,
like
yeah.
that.
Anyway,
I'd rather
me
sit in
too.
my home. But no, I mean okay, and certainly at the age of 30, emotional strain is
Mm.
is 100% something that we don't have control over. We don't know how we're going to react in those
No.
circumstances. Unfortunately, it's one thing that we will all have to go through, and how we react to it is going to differ from person to person for a number of different reasons. It's one of those really scary things that happens. But on the back end of it, hopefully, and it certainly seems like on the podcast like you are today, you have channeled that over the course of time. But talk to me. So that kind of you mentioned working in London being a dynamic as
Mhm.
well.
Kind of when you finish certain meetings, you then go out and have a few beers and you're having a chat and a laugh. And before you know it, you've had a few too many drinks. And then you pull, you go to Canary Wharf M&S and you think, oh, I'll just grab one of those sandwiches or I'll grab one of these. That'll make me feel better in the morning. And before you know it, you've had however many dead calories, really, looking back on it.
Is that what, Lucy? Is that would you? Why do we do that, us humans? What is that social conforming? Basically, is it that other
I,
people are doing it, so we feel like we have to do it?
I think so. Very
Yeah, I think
much so.
that's our almost
Habit. It's habit.
it's habit. But I think to start off with, the
Mm.
habit grows from trying to conform to the social other people doing it as well.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting. I think with alcohol because this has gone down a different dynamic that I thought it would go down. But alcohol sometimes there's this idea that it helps with social situations. I'd argue, looking back, does it? Because it helps of the social situation after work in a bar. It helps with, yeah,
Mm.
but if you went for a walk with a colleague at lunchtime, if you went to the gym, is there not other ways you can do it that doesn't involve having lots of calorie dense drinks that tend to make you hungrier, to go to Canary Wharf, Marks and Spencer's to eat more, to go home, to compromise your sleep, to start the cycle again? I think there
Yeah,
probably are other ways.
definitely.
Uh, and you can see again how people, and I've been part of that stuck of that
Mm.
sort of cycle as well. We have to have careers, we have to have jobs. Working in London definitely is a prestigious place to be for a lot of people to do these things, but it's interesting how the other side of it can be, making us compromise our health. And when did you move to Norfolk? Was that something, a decision made recently, or what did that look like?
Well, I grew up in Norfolk, so
Okay,
I've always been back here regularly, and I moved back permanently in 2012. In hindsight, I wish I'd done it sooner.
interesting.
For the pace of life, the quality of life as well.
And did you make the decision to leave your work for health reasons, or was there other aspects to it as well? Or
Well, I didn't want to live in London anymore. I felt that
right.
I'd done my time I lived in Southeast London, and my first step was to spend a year in Hertfordshire. So it's kind of
Oh,
like
that's where I'm from.
halfway house. I was in Hertford.
Hertford. Yeah, that's where my sister lives now.
Oh,
So I'm from Potter's Bar, but
oh, okay.
yeah, Hertfordshire's a nice. It is a very halfway house.
It's
Hertfordshire. It's like, okay,
nice.
I'm not. Yeah,
It's a big town, but it's nice and it's easy to get into London still. And it was easier to get back up to here to Norfolk. And then it just wasn't enough. I thought, no, I need to make a big change here. So that's what I did.
so
So I
if you're
here in
making these
2012.
moves.
Yeah,
Yeah, so you're making these moves. Obviously, you had the procedure this year, but you're making these moves in 2012 around
time ago.
potentially, yeah, about other aspects of your life, and going back to Norfolk. Again, I'm just going leaning back to that what you said there, which I really, really like, that sort of stealth half stone. Did you find these changes? I think change of job, change of location, where we live. These things are the breeding grounds to new habits, aren't they? But that can be good and bad for different reasons sometimes. How did you find the move, and with regards to your physical health?
Physical health is pretty much the point at which alcohol kind of stopped being part of my life because I had to drive to places, etc.
Yep.
Food wise, it was boredom grazing, just
Yeah.
mindless eating rather than mindful eating, I think is the best way to describe it. So you get a big bag of Doritos or something, instead of putting a few in a bowl, I'd just take the bag and then my hand would keep going in. And before I knew,
Mm.
kind of, oh my God, have I
Well,
really just demolished a whole bag of, or a
yeah.
whole strip of Jaffa cakes or a whole whatever it might be?
The so I think a couple of things to touch on there. So there's a book which I recommend every single patient to read. It's called Atomic Habits by a guy called James Clear, and he talks
Mm-hmm.
about how to basically sort of help with bad habits is to make it difficult. And obviously, by moving to Norfolk, you've made no, it's maybe not difficult to go to a pub, but it's not part of your travel routine with work
Yeah.
anymore. You're no longer looking to socially conform in that environment anymore. So you've made it difficult. That's why it's easy. But it doesn't mean that you can replace it with other things, right? And I think sometimes, you think you're not traveling like that on the train anymore. Maybe there's more time. Maybe we're at home a bit more, and that can create vulnerability in other ways, right? The human brain seeks short-term things to make itself feel better. It very much likes to have food, protect fat. That's
Mhm.
what the body wants to do. There's another book called The Chimp Paradox, which basically explains our brain is like this chimp going, just get the food, sit down, do nothing, take no risk. But society doesn't really allow us to do that anymore because it's too easy to get all that food in, right? And I think
I think I was that chimp very
I was
much.
going to say, I mean, does that
Yeah,
resonate at all? At all?
it
That you're just
does.
reacting to the chimp, if that makes sense.
Yes, it does a lot. Because it was me that was bringing the food into the house. It's not that someone else was buying the food. It's ridiculous. And then
Yeah.
where I worked, they had I worked at the construction industry training board, and there was a phrase that was the birchen bulge, which
Okay.
anyone who does or has worked there will say, because I had lots of trainee scaffolders and builders, etc., going there. This is in the middle of Norfolk, this huge facility for training, and we used to get free lunch, and that
Wow.
included puddings and custard.
Okay.
And it would be kind of hearty meals that these young lads that had been out scaffolding and bricklaying in the air
I see. Yes.
needed.
Mm.
Those of us that were more sedentary in the offices, we didn't necessarily need them quite so much.
Interesting.
So I
Interesting.
would have my big lunch at lunchtime because it was what a great thing to have, free food. I mean, there was a choice. There was a salad bar as well.
Yeah, yeah, well, yeah. I
But when
think
you could
so.
see pie, chips, and beans, or a roast dinner, or something else,
I think again that leads into the
self-restraint was always an issue for me, and that self-control and discipline.
I think so. There's again a couple of things to touch on there. I think what's interesting, we're leaning into that whole. It's good to eat your whole plate. It's good to give people food. It's a polite thing to do,
Yeah.
right? It's a bit like Christmas. You get your selection boxes and stuff. And I kind of say, I'm like, look, this is lovely, and I'm really grateful. But do I have to have all this chocolate? Because you know, depending on your work schedule, for example, people tend to be off work at Christmas, and if they've got like, surrounded by chocolate in their environment, it's Christmas. Our habits work not just daily, but also seasonally as well.
Mhm.
People do things at Christmas that they wouldn't normally do, so it's very easy to entice us to eat more. I'll start on the 1st of January. That's a great day to start. And I think it's similar with the dynamic of being at work as well. So I was talking about the Christmas environment. The
Mhm.
work environment, I think it depends, right? I love my job, but it doesn't mean that I'm not looking for things to make me feel better while I'm doing certain parts of my job. Okay.
Mhm.
So, for example, part of my job involves admin. Okay. I'm a PT. I like to train people, but it does involve doing programs and things like that. Am I delighted to be sitting there doing programs? I can get a bit tetchy. Oh, that'll make me feel a bit better. I'll eat something. You know, it doesn't. There's a misconception that people who hate their job are the only people that are vulnerable to make themselves feel better while they're working. You know, it's just a very normal thing. Yeah. And if you're at work, and obviously if someone does hate their job, they're probably potentially more likely to try and seek short-term reward. But I think everyone can be vulnerable to that. And in an office environment, which is again social conforming, everyone's doing it because it's free food. Why wouldn't you do it?
Yeah.
You can totally see how that nice gesture can become problematic.
And then cakes for birthdays and baking competitions in the office, and
Yeah.
all these positive, nice things that, yeah, I enjoyed.
I I also think lunch, and this isn't evidence based. This is my own opinion. I also think lunch is something that gives people a bit of a lull in the afternoon.
Mm.
Whereas you can have a hearty, you don't tend to want to overconsume breakfast. You don't when you get in from if you have a very sort of hearty, heavy dinner, or at least you go to bed afterwards. You know. Whereas I think at lunchtime you can eat quite a lot of food, feel worse, still have to get through the day, and you actually just snack more to kind of again find that reward system.
Usually a sugar rush, so you're
Yeah,
feeling about
100%. Yeah,
the shop, or oh, I'll
quick
just
on
have
the
this.
go things. Yeah, yeah. And okay, cool. So I always think what's interesting when we talk to patients around their journeys to what made them maybe think about going down this road is when you look back, and I think you touched on this earlier on, when you look back, you can actually identify so many different things there,
Mm.
can't you? And I think what I find most interesting is a lot of them are particularly in your control. I know obviously it's in your control. We put what in our mouth, what we put in
Yeah,
our mouth. But you can totally see why control can be lost a little bit. Bear in mind the circumstances, the environment, the social dynamic, etc.,
it's
etc.
easy to do over
Yeah,
time. It's very easy over time to put on weight
and food we've got to eat, so
or
we've
to
got
get
to make.
into bad habits. It's not.
Yeah,
It's a
yeah.
different kind of addiction, isn't it? Because it isn't like, not belittling any other addiction, but if you think of someone who has a heroin addiction, for example.
Oh, oh no, that's all right. That's
Oh,
okay.
that's
No
right.
problem.
I've
No problem.
just sent him to voicemail.
No, no, go for it. Go for it. So, what were you saying?
It's about addictions. We have to have food to eat.
Yes,
We
whether
don't have to
heroin
have
or
alcohol
yeah.
to eat. We don't have to have drugs to eat, or we don't have to gamble to eat. They're all very serious addictions. But
Mm,
food is the one thing that we still have to have a relationship with. So we can't cut that relationship out of our life completely. We have to eat still.
absolutely,
So
absolutely.
it's that relearning.
And that's a great point, the relearning, because as we're kids, we don't, and teenagers particularly, I think teenagers, 13 to 18, I think is an exceptionally impressionable time for us.
Mhm.
We don't know we're doing it at that time. We
No.
don't know the habits we have. I used to get home from school and sit down and watch. I don't think anyone does this anymore, but I don't think they even exist anymore. But I used to watch the music channels, like and see what the top 10 hits of the time were on Sky. And sit there and watch and eat lots of food before my dinner. And I justified it because I was a very extremely active kid and I didn't seem to fluctuate then. But what happened was when
Mm.
I went to work, stopped playing the sport at school, I was left over with the habits. and
Yeah.
I still didn't really know what was happening because I was just living life, and it just is what it is, right? I think what can happen is sometimes that becomes part of your identity. Me and my friends created a club on a Friday night, and we called it Fat Club, okay, where we would actually. No, but this is the thing, Lucy. It was part of the charm of the identity. We would go there and eat lots of food together,
Hmm.
and
Safety in numbers. It's a dangerous thing.
absolutely, and it was perceived as a good thing.
Yeah.
Okay, and when I was more active with sport, it didn't wasn't that problematic. But when I lost sport at 17, 18, and obviously you bring alcohol into the mix, that's where weight gain lived for me. But so I'm keen to go back to what brings us here today. So when did you? I mean, the arthritis seemed to be a point where maybe you've gone right. I need to start making some decisions here. My mobility. It's interesting how things can get worse to
It
create
did. And
option.
it got worse very quickly. And
Yeah, yeah.
I was at the point, if I think even earlier this year, if I think of January this year, because it's really been a 2024 journey for me in terms of when I properly started looking into it. I
Sure.
thought about it before, but this is the year I really started looking into it. I could only walk halfway up the stairs without having to stop because my knee and or knees were hurting. And as is
Mhm.
typical when you injure one knee or one hip or one ankle, you overcompensate with the other one. And then
100%.
all of a sudden I injured my left one, but now the right one's worse.
Got you. Yes, I've done it. I know what you mean. Yeah,
How
absolutely.
lovely. It's kind of, and even getting dressed, I couldn't bend my legs to put my socks on properly. And I thought, this is not good. And it's a combination of body being in the way, a stomach
Hmm.
area and mobility of legs, and the knee joint issues, not being able to get in and out of the shower
And
properly. A
in my
friend
head,
coming round to wash my hair over the kitchen sink for me because I
wow.
couldn't
Okay.
stand in the shower, or putting a dining room chair in the shower so I could get in and sit on it. And I thought, this is I'm
Say
not
me.
90. This
No,
is
no, no. It's
this is
interesting, isn't it?
this is bad.
I think from what you said so far, I have this image
Mm.
of a career-driven, dynamic, social
I
lady
was
throughout
active and
a.
social, and I stopped doing things because I knew that I couldn't walk more than maybe 50 meters without extreme pain.
Mm,
So I was
mm,
taking painkillers to ease the pain, but they only worked to a certain extent. So I focused on just having those at night, but then I couldn't sleep. I certainly couldn't sleep on my side, but sleeping in any position was near impossible, regardless of how many cushions I had propping up my legs, etc.
yeah.
So I was exhausted all the time, in pain all the time. What could I do? Oh, I know, I'll just have a bag of crisps.
Seeking something to make you feel better,
Seeking
and
something. So looking for that comfort.
it's a vicious cycle,
And
isn't it?
I had, oh, you've frozen. Are you still there?
Oh yeah, no, I'm still here. Yeah. Oh, sorry, it might be the internet connection a little bit. Sorry, no, I'm still
Oh,
here.
right. Okay, that's
I
fine.
was just saying it's a very vicious cycle.
It is a vicious cycle. So I thought, I need to have something done to my knees. But understandably, if I go and see my doctor to talk about it, the first thing they're going to say is, you need to lose weight.
Yeah, that's a common answer back, isn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely common answer back and expected. And there's a higher risk of surgery on someone with a higher BMI, higher weight, etc., etc. I also had high blood pressure. I had just tipped into diabetic range as well for type 2 diabetes, which is something I've not really said out loud that much before, but I'm happy to because it's important to be honest about it.
Absolutely.
And I was just ashamed of what I'd done to my body and where I'd got to.
But I think going back to one thing that I've sort of spoke about three times now, it was stealth. It happened without
It
you
did.
maybe
It
even
crept on and
noticing it a
crept
little
on and
bit.
crept on. And I'm a very clumsy person. Anyone who knows me will know my mum always used to say, you'd fall over a chalk line. If there's a door handle to walk into, I'll find it. If there's something to catch your jumper on, I'll find it. I'm naturally a clumsy person.
Right.
So I've fallen over and dinked my knees and ankles, etc. And, it hurts for a couple of days and then you're fine again. But this time was completely different.
Yeah, it was just I
It
understand,
was
and I
just
think
right. You're not going to bounce back from this. Part of it's your age. You heal differently. But
it's true.
look at yourself in the mirror and think, is this the body I want to take forward? And I
And I
thought, no, it isn't.
And then I think that's the moment, right? And I
Yeah,
think that's the key. And I always ask for that sort of moment, if you like. And it's always interesting because usually the moment is something of a real negative nature. And I think there's a lot of irony in a very, very good way there of like, you almost have to hit that rock bottom, if
You
you
did.
like,
Yeah.
to go, "Oh, okay, I need to start thinking outside the box here a little bit. I had it on a career basis when I was 27, when I became
Mm.
PT. I was like, this, whatever you're doing, it is not working. You need to start thinking differently. Um, and okay, cool. So, and then were you aware of bariatric surgery at that sort of stage? Had you looked
I
into it
was, yeah,
prior?
I was aware of it. I'd watched and enjoyed and admired the people on. I'm sure people have talked about my £600 Life, the US
Oh, yeah, yeah.
program, and all these other shows, and thought, wow, they are doing incredibly well. And seeing the surgery and thinking, okay, it's a major operation, but it's a potential life-changing operation. So I then started doing research early this year, and
Yeah.
I was at the point of the next day I was due to start my liver reduction diet with a different provider who I'd gone
Okay.
with because they had a hospital here in Norfolk.
I see. Makes sense.
So
Yeah.
much more convenient. So that was
Sure.
the main driver. So I'd had consultations, I'd met the anaesthetist, I'd had all the blood tests, and I'd ticked all the boxes. And I got to the point the day before the liver reduction diet, and the hospital, because it didn't have an acute care department, the senior
Oh,
management had determined that they weren't going to carry out operations on anyone who had a BMI over 50, which at the time I had a BMI of 53.1. So, okay, your surgery can't happen. I'd arranged to go and stay with my brother and sister-in-law who live not too far from the hospital for a few days afterwards. I'd got cat care in place,
yeah, yeah, of course, yeah.
everything sorted out, and then the rug was pulled out from under me. So I thought, what on earth am I going to do now? So I started doing research online, and I found tonic. And then a friend of mine that I used to work with at the place that gave out the free lunches had put a post on about, I remembered her putting a post on her Instagram, this is my new diet. And it had protein powder, protein shakes, and different stuff. You know, the future starts here. So I
Yeah.
thought, do you know, I'm going to drop her a little message on Facebook and not
Good.
say, have you had bariatric surgery, but say, I noticed this, you know. And she posted some photos of her looking absolutely incredible, etc., etc. And it turns out that she had had surgery in February of this year
Wow.
with tonic and had a fantastic experience.
Good.
Did surgeon to myself, which is fine, but had a brilliant experience, had lost her excess weight, living her fantastic life. So we exchanged a lot of messages, and the key thing that got me was the value of the aftercare.
Perfect.
Because
Yeah.
it's easy to look at. I'm a member of a Facebook group, which is a UK wide, and it's people that have gone to Turkey, Lithuania, people who've been to Tonic, Spire, all these other providers, etc., that exist, people who are going down the NHS pathway, which obviously is very long. And I thought, no, this is my health, I'm going to have surgery. People can make their own independent decisions, but
Yeah.
I want to have it done in this country with a surgeon that I can look up and research and understand exactly what's going to happen afterwards in terms of dietary support, nurse phone calls and catch-ups, PT, counselling, the app and all of the downloads that are available, the community. I thought there's a huge value in that. So yes, the surgery is more expensive, but look at what you're actually getting for that. And it's been worth every penny for me. So
Good. Well, I think just to touch on that, I think we do. I think on these forums, that's quite a common thing that comes up. People go on these forums, which is a very natural place to go and do research,
yeah,
and we do seem to stand out. I think compared to other practices because it's and this is the thing, right? And we know that bariatric surgery it offers relatively quick weight loss in the early stages, but you've got to build from that
it
point.
is a tool. It's not
Yes, it's a tool, 100%.
it's not,
And
this will fix your issues. It is, this
yeah,
will give you a really good head start.
indeed. And I
If
think
you're in the right place, this will really help you out.
and I
But
think
you've got to go
sometimes
with it.
yeah, and I think the cheaper price, the broad, less efficient aftercare is buying into the narrative that it's this quick thing, we're going to go and get it done. Okay.
Yeah.
And already then potentially a slight flaw of that mindset. And yeah, 3 months post procedure, you might be thinking, okay, this worked me, I saved some money here. But I'm thinking 18 months post procedure, is that person in a similar boat? Now, you'd always get people who can be motivated and they will absolutely be disciplined and do the right things. But as percentage, it'll just be interesting to see. Okay. Yeah. The injections at all, was that anything that ever crossed your mind? Was that something you were aware of at all? Or
I was aware of them, but it didn't, personally for me, I thought, well, it'll work for as long as I'm taking them. And as soon as I stop taking them, it's not going to work anymore. And I had to be really honest with myself and think, do you know, my relationship with food is, I need, I didn't have an off switch. And the sleeve surgery gave me the off switch.
Indeed. I think that's a very, very good point. I think on the injection sort of side of things, it's not saying they don't work for some people now and again. I think when somebody's at the BMI that you're at, that's a long journey on those. And and weight loss, we know, slows down over time. And
exactly.
Motivation's at its highest at the very beginning. As weight loss slows down, motivation tends to go down as well. A tool, like a sleeve or a bypass, there's no going back. You're in, okay? And I think that you mentioned the off switch there a little bit. You can still have certain food groups, that's fine.
If I want to have crisps, I can. Yeah, but I can't have six. Well, I suppose I could have 6 packets a day. I don't know. I haven't even wanted to.
Yeah, and I think
that's the issue. I haven't wanted to, and Correct. It's also in my own head knowing I've invested in myself. Why on earth would I sabotage myself? I've sabotaged myself in the past, and it really didn't help. It didn't do me any favors at all.
And that's that. But that's what you're doing there is you're buying into the compound effect over time, aren't you? You're going, oh, okay, I'm not seeking short-term reward anymore. I'm actually going, no, do you know what? I'm not going to do that because I know if I keep doing this, I seem to have some momentum going on here. And that picture, I spoke about this on the last podcast. It's the same in the financial world, isn't it? If you keep spending money, well, you've got no money, you've got a problem. But if you invest wisely over the course of time, it actually becomes part of the journey, if you like, of, actually, the more I kind of put off, I think we live in quite a short-term reward, self-esteem society at the moment. Like, there's lots of things to make you feel better now.
It's the immediacy, isn't it? And it's social media, and scrolling on TikTok or Snap, or whatever it might be. Everything is accessible. Information, shopping.
The lot. So
whatever you want.
You can press 3 buttons and suddenly things will be at your door tomorrow and what have you. And I think while that's convenient in many ways, and look, I think there's a time and a place for it every now and again, have your pillars in place towards what's my long-term project here, and you will reap the benefits. It won't be today, unfortunately. It might not actually be this week, but if we look at sort of maybe monthly, quarterly, yearly returns on your physical health, like we would maybe a spreadsheet with your financial health, I think you'd really that year could be a defining moment for the rest of your life.
Absolutely.
Because you go, that feeling of what I've got to look forward to, excitement, learning, putting things in practice to achieve over the course of time is way better than that thing now. And you don't get the guilt afterwards. And without sounding too corny, it is that kind of journey, that patience, that day to day, which is where actual happiness lives, rather than what the number on the scales actually says. The scale is actually the byproduct of your habits.
It's a measure, that's all.
It's a measure, not the measure. No. Correct. Yeah. And so on the day leading up to it, how are we feeling?
Well, I phoned Tonic and explained where I was in the process with another.
Yep.
And 9 days later, I was having my operation.
That's a quick turnaround.
There was a cancellation. Someone had deferred their surgery for 6 months, which is obviously people could do if they wish to.
I suppose what you had happen prior, i.e., the research with another provider, and it not happen. I suppose the 9-day turnaround time was actually quite desirable, right?
It was, because I was poised, and my fridge was full of sugar-free jelly.
Yeah, okay.
I'd cleansed, I'd purged the fridge and cupboards of everything that might tempt me.
I'm with you. Yeah. No, I can see how that actually works. Yeah, that you can totally see how that would be advantageous to do that. I'm here, I'm ready. Let's go.
I'm ready. Let's go. So I started my liver reduction diet. I then had obviously the phone calls, lots of forms to fill in. It was almost like a full-time job getting to the point of surgery, but it's important information. You're having a major operation. You're going under general anaesthetic. It's going to change your body forever. You need to be sure.
And there's
And it's
something
important. And I liked the fact that there was that end-to-end support and cover and information about
I'm glad you said that. I'm
good
glad you
and
said
bad.
Yeah, it's something that's not been spoken about. But there's a lot of forms and stuff to fill out. I always think that if you're ready and your mindset is ready to do this, the forms are important. Okay, that's the easy bit, to be honest with you. It's if people complain about the forms, I'm thinking I don't know if you're mentally prepared to change your life here.
Exactly. If admin is a pain.
Yeah,
So then I
but
had obviously the phone calls with the dietitian, phone calls with a phone call with a counsellor, etc. Phone call with Mr. Howard, who did my surgery in
yes,
Derby. And yeah, I arrived the day before the surgery. Luckily, they wanted to redo my pre-op blood test, even though I had the results from a week previously, which is absolutely fine.
hmm
So I arrived the day before surgery with my brother and sister-in-law, booked an Airbnb little house for 2 nights, went to the hospital, had my bloods done with the nurse practitioner, the full whistles and bells checks. They were done in plenty of time for the next day, my surgery, when I was weighed in first thing in the morning. And between my scary weight earlier in the year and starting to properly look into it, I'd lost a stone, but then I
nice.
lost another stone on the liver reduction diet, which I hope people don't look at that and think, oh, I must lose a stone then. No, it's all
No, no, no,
relative to where you start from.
100%.
I had a lot of weight to lose and still do have weight to lose. So I'd lost a stone. That was the target Mr. Howard had set me. He said, you should be able to lose a stone, and that will put you in a good position for liver health, because obviously needing to tilt you on the table, etc., get the liver out of the way. And everything went really smoothly. I had a physio come and see me to talk to me and explain to me how to get out of bed post-surgery, which was hugely valuable.
Brilliant.
Wish I'd had that before about my knees, but it's something I still do today.
What did they, out of interest, what did they, just for the, I've got an idea what you're going to say, but for people maybe listening, like, what was the advice?
I had always been a sit up straight and then swing your legs around person.
Yeah.
No, don't do that. Go onto your side, use your strong arm to push yourself up, and then gently move your legs across. So it's getting off the bed starting from being on your side rather than being on your back and kind of trying to do some kind of sit up.
I suppose that
and
would be
then leg swing.
And that would be protecting your incisions as well, right?
Exactly. So it's less movement and protects your incisions. So I was last on the list. I think there were 3 or 4 before me. So I went down at about midday. And I'd been clock watching for so long, it was a relief to be going down, to be honest.
Yeah, I can imagine, yeah. Here's a deep question for you, Lucy, if you don't mind me asking. But on that day, when you're sitting there and there's 4 people ahead of you and you've got 3 ahead of you and you're 4th going in, did you believe it was going to work? Did you think this is it? I'm going to make this work. Did you believe it? I know that sounds like quite a deep question, but what do you think at that sort of stage there?
There was possibly a couple of % of me that thought, this isn't going to work.
Okay. That's common.
They're not going to be able to do it because of, I don't know, I've got a liver 10 times the size of a normal human. Just these natural negative thoughts in your
you thought maybe the operation might not be able to go through for whatever reason.
It was all this, it's that kind of doom mongering, isn't it? But it was only a small percentage, and I was pleased about that.
Yeah.
Because I think that's just natural nerves. So I just put it down to natural nerves. It's kind of, you're having an operation. You're having a general anaesthetic. You've been relatively lucky so far health-wise. You haven't had an overnight stay in hospital. You've never had an operation. You've had local anaesthetics, have your wisdom teeth out, but that's it. You've never even broken a bone, touch wood. So it was new to be in that environment as much as anything.
It's a very natural thing, I think.
Natural nerves.
You have to have
it's important because I cared about it. It was a financial investment and also a personal investment and an emotional investment.
100%. I think it's my wedding, for example. I thought, what if no one comes? It's like, people going to come, Harry. And so you have that 2% of like slightly rash.
There's something. Thinking. There's that. Yeah, that little demon in there that says, "Oh no, that won't work for you," or "This won't happen." Yeah.
I think that's a healthy thing. I think that's a
Yeah.
healthy thing. And someone said, I asked that question to a patient the other day in their intro call, do you believe it's going to work? And their answer was, belief is not a gift I've been given yet, but I will let you know 6 months procedure. I thought it was a
Oh,
very good answer. I think that's the right answer. Yeah, I think that's the right answer. But okay, cool. So you woken up, talk to me about the liquid phase, the puree phase, the soft phase, how you navigated those. You said you had your fridge prepared. How was that
yeah.
all looking?
The team, just before I go into that, the team at the hospital were absolutely amazing.
Brilliant. Very
Full
important.
kudos. I was checked so regularly I just did exactly what I was told. They got me up and moving after a couple of hours. Mr. Howard had said, you're not going to like me very much because I have what is referred to as an aggressive recovery protocol. I said, all right, then what does that include? He said, well, we'll get you up as soon as we can, and we want you walking up and down the corridor every half hour, taking
Good.
sips from a little cup every 15 minutes and putting a little tick on a box on a form to make sure you've done it.
Hmm.
So I did those things. I mean, admittedly, I was probably a little bit away with the fairies.
Yeah. No, but I think the small things done well consistently over time, and I think there's a couple of things that Mr. Awad's doing there. Yes, obviously it's super important to keep hydrated.
Yeah.
It's super important to get up and get moving. But I think there's already that buying into of like, okay, these are just movement, fluids. I think sleep. These are the basics of a human that we need to get right.
Mm.
And post procedure, it does not mean that we don't do those things, and it can be quite normal to sit around. If we sit around, we're probably not prioritising fluids because we're not going and getting it and what have you. So there's a few sort of early disciplines there. I kind of like the way he calls it an aggressive protocol
Yeah.
because it's
With a
like,
smile as well.
yeah, oh yeah, kill with kindness, yeah.
Yeah.
But like it's almost like this is going to be hard,
Yeah.
and that's a good thing. We want to buy into that mindset a little bit. Yeah, I like that. But okay, cool. And then
So I had a good day and night, and then at
yeah,
midnight I was not tucked in, but it was kind of okay. Now I can go to sleep. But I
yeah,
had the compression vibration wraps on my legs. That was quite an interesting experience. Obviously, to minimise the potential risk of blood clots.
correct.
But
Yeah,
I soon got used to that, and I slept solidly till about 6 o'clock in the morning. Nurse came round, chatting away. Big part of being discharged from hospital is having your post-op meds.
yep,
Consultant coming round, and I think I was discharged at around 12 o'clock. I was feeling okay. I felt, I was walking slowly, but I was fine to walk. I'd had to, in my ensuite, had to collect my wee, for want of a better phrase. Sorry.
that's all right. That happens. Yeah, it's cool.
So I've been doing that.
Yeah,
And I was ready. I phoned my brother and said, I've been told I should be ready at 1 o'clock. I said,
good to go. Good to go. Yeah.
good to
Okay.
go. They came pick me up. About 2.5 hour drive home. I was a bit concerned about the drive.
I can imagine.
I just thought, I don't know how this is going to go, but I was absolutely fine. Absolutely fine. I had my big bottle of water, and every so often I just have a little sip. We stopped halfway so I could have a walk about, and felt good. Got home and felt really tired.
Yeah, I think that's quite a natural thing. Yeah, I think home is when you get back, it's like the natural comforts come along. And what I mean by that is like your bed and things like that.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think it's interesting because obviously someone who you mentioned, I've never had an overnight stay at hospital or anything like that.
Mm.
And this is where I think our aftercare can be quite valuable in those early stages. Obviously, the nurse tends to check in for the first week.
Nurse calling every day was fantastic, particularly
Yeah.
with regard to wound healing.
Yes.
After having been on the milk, yogurt, and jelly liver reduction diet, carrying on with liquids only was a breeze.
Okay. Yeah.
Because
Okay.
it was what I was used to. I mean, the challenge of it before, obviously, is you don't have that physical restriction. All you have is that willpower that if I don't do this properly, it's only myself I'm letting down.
I think the charm of the liquid side of things, which isn't a very desirable thing pre-op.
It does its job. It does what it's
Yeah,
here to do.
yeah, like naturally, I think it's actually quite interesting the relationship we have with texture of food and things like that. I think the charm post-op is okay. I know what to do this right. It's a very easy diet to follow, and it's very
Yeah.
filling as well because it's early days, right? And I think that combined works together quite well. You can't really. It's pretty obvious if you're going off piste, but and then so going through the weeks and weight loss being relatively aggressive in those early stages. when did you start to notice potential health benefits towards perhaps your joints? And you mentioned sort of the potential of type 2. Well, where did these things start to creep in? Or have they? I mean, it's still early
They
days,
have.
but
It's still early days, but I'd had some blood tests. It must have been probably about 4 weeks after surgery.
yeah,
And the previous time I'd had my bloods done, everything was kind of in outside normal ranges. 3 to 4 weeks post-op, they were all in normal ranges.
wow.
So things like
4 weeks, 4 weeks.
4 weeks. So 5 weeks, including the liver reduction diet, obviously, because that would
Yeah,
have had an impact as well.
of
So
course, yeah.
just over a month. And all of a sudden, everything is looking a lot brighter.
That's a big moment,
My
I think.
blood pressure was better.
Blood pressure, yeah. These are big moments in these early stages that get under celebrated, in my opinion. I literally had a
Everything's
patient
focused on
yesterday.
the visual and what you look like in a dress. And it's kind of, that's nice.
Yeah,
But think about what's inside. The fact that, and how much healthier I am now. And that's
and
just continued to improve. I've
of
actually got an
course,
appointment with my GP tomorrow morning to review medication. I'm no longer taking metformin.
wow,
I've got one more blood test to do to check glucose levels because it looks back at the previous 3 months. So I've got
yes.
one more blood test to book in January. After that, I'll be discharged from that service and it's gone completely.
I think that there's a
Big thing.
tremendous. I know you're not doing this, but there's a tremendous undervalue towards this stuff. I speak to patients sometimes who are 8 weeks post procedure, 10 weeks post procedure, and the first thing they'll say is, "Oh, it's a bit disheartening. It stayed the same for a couple of weeks." I'm like, "Well, that can be normal. Let's look at
Your
your
body's
average."
healing. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Body's
but I'm like,
healing.
let's look at your average over the course of time. Oh, it's
Mm,
still, over £3 a week. That's aggressive weight loss. You've lost £32 in 10 weeks. It just meant you lost £32 in 8 weeks, but it's still aggressive nonetheless.
mm.
The body does that. Time to month, stress. You're eating more food over the course of time, which is definitely the right thing to do. Any health benefits? Oh yeah, my resting heart rate's gone down by 30 beats. My type 2's in regression, and I wasn't able to do 5,000 steps. Now I'm able to do 8,000 steps. And I'm like, okay, right. The story here
Yeah, back up.
is those three things first. And I wouldn't mind sort of understanding why the weight slowed down a couple of weeks. That's not the first thing you say. I think it's a really important dynamic, that,
Yeah.
because the value, yes, I know the weight loss is providing it, and I understand if it stays the same weight for 2 weeks, we can start overthinking it a little bit. But the story is the health, because that's always going to be the story. Because without that, unfortunately, we're all doomed, aren't we? And I think that is a narrative that we need to sort of change over the course of time. Certainly, I'm keen to do. It's like health benefits first, then okay, wait, how can we manage that a little bit?
So I'm likely to be taken off some. I take a certain medication for a mental health condition, and one of the side effects of that is higher blood pressure. So when I was a higher weight,
Yeah,
compounding with that, you take one thing, you need something else to offset it. So I was taking 3 or 4 other little things in very small doses, but I'm having my review tomorrow morning, and I'm hoping that they will start either being reduced, or the one where I currently take 2.5 milligrams, it might actually be removed. So to have those prescriptions and statin, I don't need that anymore. My cholesterol's 4.8.
wow,
It's kind of, that's a
it's
that's a
huge.
big
It's
win for
huge.
me. Instead of coming back from the surgery with a massive bag that looks as if it's about to head to the old people's home, without being stereotypical towards people in old,
No, I'm with you. I'm with you. It's absolutely
I'll have a
huge.
couple of just regular items, which is huge. Such a big win, and it's something that people can't see. It's something I may not want to, shout in the middle of Tesco's, but it's important.
I think
So important.
on medication, I'm not a doctor, right? And I'm not someone who prescribes medication or anything like that. They have a value for certain aspects, but usually the way the human body works is, with certainly hormonally, is
Mm,
what goes up must come, other things will go down. There's a constant, we're always constantly seeking homeostasis to have everything aligned as much as possible.
yeah,
And usually medication will knock that out of sync based on the fact that it will give you the benefit of whatever the medication's for, but usually there's an offset somewhere else.
absolutely. Yeah.
And I think the goal has to be to get off them over the course of time
Mm.
through doing hard things, and through growing that appreciation towards those habits. It has to be the goal. Now, whether we get all off it remains to be seen. It depends, right, on person to person cases. But yeah, again, to my point earlier on, I think sometimes there's an underappreciation of what is the offset to what this thing's actually doing for me. Oh, is it your physical health that blood pressure going up is not a good thing? How can we manage that accordingly to make it better? Well, weight loss will probably be something that really, really helps that offset.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's a can be a bit of a taboo subject sometimes. That's why I'm talking about it very, very sort of delicately. But I think it's just worth. I think it's worth an open mind to it over the course of time. And 100%, not having to take these or a lowering of dosage is definitely a massive non-scale victory that probably gets underspoken about
Absolutely.
as well.
And it's such a huge step in the right direction. And I would recommend everyone downloads the NHS app and look at your blood results and look at
Yeah,
the numbers change over time. And then remember, do you know what? If you didn't lose anything, or if you lost a pound 2 weeks in a row, which I've done, and
yeah.
oh, really? It's kind of give yourself a bit of a shake and I've got a spreadsheet where I've put all of my different results and things into.
Oh, love it, love it.
Have a look at how your BMI's dropped.
Yeah,
Have a
yeah.
look.
Well,
Mine's gone down by where are we? I was 53 point something. It's currently 40.2.
so you're hunting down. Yeah, yeah. I think. Well, before we came onto the podcast, you
That's
mentioned
good.
BMI. Yeah, I think BMI is one of those ones where the lighter you get, not the less relevant it is,
Yeah.
but it's people think, oh, I've got to be 25, otherwise I'm unhealthy, and I understand that, but there are averages to play around with as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, like I've seen people who are very healthy weight at BMI 27 because they're particularly short, or it doesn't really. I lift weights consistently, and I encourage people to lift weights. I think it's a very healthy thing to do.
Yeah.
It actually goes against BMI a little bit because you're ideally building muscle. Now, I'm not saying no patient post procedure is going to be able to become Arnold and walk around, with massive lats and massive biceps because we're not eating enough calories to do that.
Yeah.
It tends to be a very desirable word, toned, so you help with things like loose skin, you help work against that. It helps with your metabolism. But my point being is that the closer you get to maybe 25, that could actually make you a 25.5 or a 26.5 or something like that. And that's okay. But when somebody is, you mentioned they've gone from 53 down to early 40s, that dynamic BMI is extremely relevant because it is hunting down that healthy range, if you like. Weight is an interesting one. The relationship patients have with BMI versus weight is an interesting one because when I've been there before, this is before I worked with Tonic, and people would step. I used to work at David Lloyd, and they step on this machine called the body index machine.
Oh, yes, I know that one.
Yeah, and it would tell you your weight. Now everyone kind of knows their weight. Everyone kind of knows it, and when they get on it, there can almost be a rolling of the eyes of, oh, yeah, I know. But when they see the BMI, I think is associated with death more. Okay,
Yeah.
I don't want to sound too morbid, but I think it's associated, and death terrifies us. So I
And the
think when
word
they
obese is horrible.
obese,
And
absolutely. So
morbidly obese is even
when someone
worse.
sees, yes, 100%. So when someone can see their weight and go, oh, I know I'm overweight, and it can create a roll of the eyes effect sometimes. And I get that because it's highly, it's an emotional roller coaster. But BMI, people roughly know it should be 25 or so. If they see 35 or 40, there's a different association of, oh, well, I'm an unhealthy, I need to sort this out. And I think that's where it's extremely valuable. But once you hunt down late 20s or so, bear in mind, skin can be a feature post-procedure as well. I'm not saying it's not. I'm not saying it's completely not relevant, but it becomes less relevant over the course of time, if that makes sense. Are you on board with that? Does that make sense?
Absolutely. And it's hugely relevant for me because about 6 weeks after I had my surgery, I've got my referral through to see the orthopedic consultant about my knees.
Oh, that's where again
So
that kind of going from 50 to 40 is absolutely huge for things like that.
this was at that point I think my BMI was, as we're BMIing at the moment, probably about 46. And he said, from the initial referral letter, he said, you've done brilliantly. And I explained to him I'd had a sleeve. He said, well, that's fantastic. It's obviously working
Yes,
well.
good.
Keep doing what you're doing. When your BMI drops down to 40, give me a call. He said, I'm sure you'll be there within the 6 months. If you get there sooner, ring my secretary and we'll get you back in for the next referral and start the process.
Awesome.
So
For those metrics, it's huge. For those, yeah.
Win for me to know that I'm probably, and I must admit, I mean, it's way day on a Thursday for me because I have operation on a Thursday. I will have my fingers crossed tomorrow that I've dropped that £2 to get to the 40 points so I can make the phone call. But equally,
Wow.
if it hasn't happened this week, I know it'll happen in the next few.
Yeah.
But I
Buying into
really
long
want
term.
it to.
Yeah, look, I mean,
I do really want it to.
we're only human, right? We
We
want
are
things, we
human.
want it now.
We are human.
But
So to be
the
able to get that in process where I'm at, they won't. I know different trusts have different rules,
yeah,
but where I am in Norfolk, it's BMI under 40 for that type of surgery.
but
Absolutely
that
fine, makes sense.
yeah,
Less weight to bear, etc., etc. Challenging
100%.
anesthetics.
And but that asterisk you put there of like, if it's not tomorrow, it'll probably be next
Yeah,
week. And I think that's because
it's
that is
going to
somebody who,
happen. It's going
yeah,
to happen. It's just how quickly, and
but
I'm just so happy about that.
but what I would say about that, Lucy, I think an important caveat to add to that
Mm.
is because of the fact that you've got the habits in place and you're achieving weight loss, okay? People who are potentially haven't got that appreciation of certain habits and wait a stall for a period of time, they don't know where the next pound's coming from sometimes. So that confidence shows me, oh, that's somebody who has got their practice in place. They've done it long enough to see, actually, this is what I want to be doing going forwards. And that's absolutely huge. And that is always the goal long term, because the truth be told is when you get to your goal weight, whatever that may be, the
Do you know,
habits you're
I've
left
no
over with.
idea.
Yeah, well, no, and that's okay.
Not
That's
yet.
okay as well, right? But the habits you're left over with,
Yeah.
I'd argue just as valuable because, and I don't, us humans, I spoke about this on the last podcast, but it's worth mentioning again, there's a hedonic effect. When we achieve certain things, it's no longer that interesting anymore. And it's
It was boring, and there's almost an expectation of, well, I've got to lose £5 because I've lost £4, and
correct. Yes,
it's,
yes.
do you know,
And
my body, even though I'm 52, menopausal, etc., it's still cyclical for a woman.
oh, yeah.
And I think it's actually, for me, it may not be the case for others, but it's worth looking at. Are your lower loss weeks, or perceived lower loss weeks, are they connected in some way to your cycle?
Very likely.
Because I think they are for me. I can have two lower weeks or a nothing week, and I think, oh well. And
So,
the next week I'll lose £5, or the next week I might lose £1. But it's
so there's a follicular phase and a phase called luteal
mm,
phase, and the luteal phase is always going to be a bit up and down.
yep.
Whereas follicular tends to be a far more consistent. So people weigh weekly, that's fine. But I would always encourage people to compare monthly. So compare the
Mm,
1st of April to the 1st of May, compare the 8th of April to the 8th of May. That tends to make more sense for the female cycle.
yeah.
But
I
at
thought
most,
I was done with all of that, but obviously not.
well, no, I think it's all about, yeah, no. I think it can be more
Alive.
prevalent younger days, but it's still
Yeah,
very much relevant, you know.
yeah. Still in,
Um,
even when you're in your 50s.
yeah. What's I've just realised actually, I said to you I'll take 30 to 40 minutes of your time, and
That's right.
we're on 57 minutes. So. But that's all good. What's next, Lucy? Obviously, you mentioned some things there around the qualifying to have the procedure done with regards to
That's a big
your knee.
surgeon appointment, seeing my GP and getting meds reduced, etc. Getting back to exercising, because now I can walk further.
Awesome.
I wouldn't have been able to sit down on a bench to do some arm exercises before, but now I'm in a position where I can. So that's next on my list.
Perfect.
Um,
That's a great one.
so I'm doing really well. I'm currently, my last weigh-in was 19 stone 6. So
Wow. 4 months.
there's a lot to go. I've probably lost just over half of my excess weight, I'd say.
That's good. That's
Ish.
quick. Well, I mean, I say when I say wow, that's good. That's quick. That kind of goes against my message a little bit. It's not
It,
a race to the finish line.
no, I started from a higher number, so you're going
Yeah,
to have
but
numbers at the beginning.
regardless,
I know
it's still an amazing achievement. And
it's worked.
yeah, my fight, your 2%, I didn't have to worry, did it? But my final question I always ask every single patient, and this can be you can choose. It can be for someone who's thinking about having the operation. We know we get listeners on here that haven't had it done, but also if it's someone who's maybe, I mean, you're early days yourself, right? But
Yeah.
someone who's maybe in the first sort of few weeks post procedure. What's your number one tip on I did on like a mindset basis towards coping with the procedure, cope with that short term worry to overcome it to that long term reward that we spoke about earlier on? What would be your sort of number one tip for somebody thinking about it?
I'd say the first 6 weeks are hard.
Okay.
prepare yourself for it, because and remember that you've had major surgery.
The fact that allow yourself to recover.
Let yourself recover. Give yourself the grace to recover. Do what's recommended to you. Follow the diets. If you fall off one day, and it doesn't matter. Just get back on. And I
Correct.
think
Yeah.
that's probably the problem that anyone who's had an issue with their weight over the years doesn't do, is we don't fall off the wagon and then get back on it. We fall off and then we think, oh, well, I'm here now.
It's
So
so common in diet, and it's
you
usually because the
I
method they
can
were doing
eat
it.
food. I can eat pretty much whatever I want. I can eat less of it. And when I look at my plate, psychologically, I always eat the protein first.
Good habit to have.
And
Yeah.
I would say it's challenging, but good things don't tend to be easy. It takes a long time to put on a lot of weight.
It does, yeah.
And you'll be surprised looking back. I've kind of been journaling bits and pieces and looking back how I was feeling, how I was doing. Was I tired? How was I sleeping? Coming back to talking about blood results and BMI and those inner victories, non-scale victory of being able to walk down the side of the bin at the side of the house without brushing against it. All these
Amazing.
silly things. Trying a top on you haven't worn for 2 years and it was buried at the back of your wardrobe, and now it's almost too big, so you think, well, I've got to wear it every day now. Give yourself time, use the resources, and if you've got any questions, speak to the team at Tonic, because they are fantastic. They're there to help and guide, and use the app because
Thank you.
you've got a load of resources on there.
Yeah, no, we've really stopped that one out
So
now. There's
much.
hours and hours and hours of content, including the podcast on there. There's hours on. And I think, yeah, no, thank you. I think like really, really sound advice. I think the first 6 weeks, I think there's a again an underappreciation towards the mental side of it. Yes, you've had physical
Yeah.
intervention, but that doesn't mean that your brain doesn't want to necessarily do certain things, and that's a really interesting battle. And then I think for me, yeah, like it's one of those ones where there's usually it can be later than 4 months. It can be, but I think there's sometimes that moment of I've got this. I get it. It's a bit like you learn to drive, and you do 20 hours worth of driving, and suddenly you go, I think I've got it, and then you're a bit more on autopilot. You're a bit more on autopilot. Then you haven't to think about the gear change and the indicators anymore. You haven't got to think about protein anymore or portion control. It just kind of it gets there. And so
You just
any
do
habit
it. Yeah.
yeah. You just do it on, and that obviously makes it easier, right? So you've got that initial habit change in the early stages, but you've got this tool to lean on while there's aggressive losses going on. That's a nice combination to suddenly have those habits in place to be a bit more on autopilot, and it gets easier. You haven't got to think about it less. Sorry, you haven't got to think about it as much. You think about it less to allow you to thrive in other aspects of your life, and that's got to be the goal, is to not just be about weight, not be it's
No.
I know obviously you mentioned 2 pounds more. That's because you've got a big thing that you're thriving towards there.
Purely for that specific target that is measured.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, but
Be measures. They have to be cut-off points, don't they? I completely understand it.
yeah, and I think there will be weeks where it stays the same. That's okay because
Yeah.
you're just busy doing other stuff, right? And that's normal. And I think perfect. Well, listen, thank you so much, Lucy. I think there's so many nuggets of wisdom there that will help patients pre and post. And fundamentally, what I can see from speaking to you, and obviously the guests. Well, actually, this will be going on YouTube as well. So some people watching it on YouTube will be able to see it. You look so in control, and before we came on, we spoke about people's eyes and how they tell a story sometimes, particularly in a before and after photo. You look engaged, you look alive, you look excited, and I didn't have the pleasure of knowing you pre-op, but it sounds like you were far away from that, and that's again a really, really big win going forwards from there as well.
Definitely. No, it's the best decision I ever made. Wish I'd made it earlier, but I made it when I did.
You'd have to kind of have those moments of and we touched on it, but you have to have those moments sometimes. Go, oh, okay, I need to start thinking differently here. And I think they happen for a reason that way sometimes as well. All right, cool. Listen, Lucy, thank you so much, guys. Thank you so much for tuning in there. Please, if you have any questions or you want to come onto the pod, harry@tonicsurgery.co.uk. We'll be back next Friday, and I will look forward to catching up with you all very, very soon. Goodbye.
Bye.